Were you hurt today or were you injured? That was the question John Humphrey's wrestling coach asked him after he quit in the middle of a match. John was a junior in high school. He told the truth. He was hurt. He'd gotten psyched out at weigh-in and he sold it. His coach said, "Don't ever give up like that on my mat again." He said, "If you'd have won today, you'd have been the only junior in history of the school to go all conference in 3 sports." He turned and walked away. John's been knocked down a lot harder since then. He'll tell you his story. He's been a mentor of mine for more than 20 years. I've never once seen him stay down. This is episode 13 of the Grit Mindset Revisited. Listen in and stay gritty. This is Matt Rosen, and this is the Grit Mindset with me, your host, Matt Rosen. The mission of the Grit Mindset is to inspire and empower listeners by delving deep into the journeys of those who have faced significant challenges and emerged stronger. Through authentic conversations, we uncover the mindsets, strategies, and lessons that have propelled these individuals to overcome adversity and achieve success. My aim is to provide actionable insights and real-world advice to help our listeners cultivate their own grit and navigate their personal and professional lives with confidence and resilience. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Grit Mindset with Matt Rosen. I'm your host, Matt Rosen. With me in the studio here today, I've got a great friend of mine and mentor named John Humphrey. I've known John, I'll use this joke again, I think our friendship could buy alcohol about now. Known him for a long time, and I'm really excited to have him on the show and have him share his story with all of you listeners. So, John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. Great to be here.
So tell us about a little bit about yourself and your latest venture, and then we'll kind of dive back a few years.
Yeah, so I tried semi-retirement. That didn't take, and started getting customers back at the end of 23 and into 24. We're like, hey, this AI thing's coming. Can you come help us? We need data problems. And so Dipesh Patel and I started Cove Point Data back in 2024. We really got going in earnest maybe a year ago.
And you guys are out there helping clients with their data.
Yeah, all we do is data and AI. So advanced analytics, machine learning, Power BI, mostly on the Microsoft stack. And then AI has taken us in a completely different direction with AI-driven development and AI analytics. You know, people are doing this kind of work on large data sets without normalizing a database and putting it in a data warehouse or a data lake or something like that. So it's really creative and fun.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. We're getting involved in that space as well, and it's good the way the whole world's going. So
yeah.
So what got you here? Talk about John Humphrey, the early days.
Well, I've always been kind of an entrepreneur. I was raised in a family of independent thinkers. I was the youngest of 3. Youngest enough to where I was almost like an only child, and my parents let me get away with murder.
How many years younger than the next child?
I'm 4 years younger than my middle sister and 6 years younger than my oldest.
Got it. Yeah, I was the oldest.
So they were all out of the house.
Yeah.
And, I was thinking about this. My first W-2 salary was my first job out of college.
Yeah.
I always worked for myself. In high school, I had lawns, and I painted houses, and I did odd jobs, and I always had money in my pocket.
Cash only.
Cash only, caddied. I was a caddy. And, so I think that I sort of learned a work ethic. Our folks, we lived in an upper middle class neighborhood. Anything that we wanted, we had to pay half for.
Nice.
So they sort of instilled a little bit of scrappiness in us as youngsters.
Yeah. So. Tell me a little bit more about your upbringing and your folks and, what that looked like.
Well, it's funny. I have a very interesting life story. I was abused in the Boy Scouts as a youngster, 5th grade to 7th grade. I clawed my way out of that and got transferred to another school and really completely suppressed that memory and never told anybody. My hair fell out when I was 12.
Wow.
So it was like girls' puberty and all of a sudden no hair. So I always had this self-conscious nature in big crowds, or, I'd go in places and people would stare. I remember half my friends were Jewish and half my friends were Italian in New Jersey, and I wore a baseball cap into the synagogue and into Mass on a Saturday night. And so But I think what saved me was athletics. You know, I was a really avid athlete, you know, pretty good for a white boy, I guess, in the Northeast. I played football, I wrestled,
Yeah.
and I ran track in high school. And that taught me some really great lessons. In fact, one of my early sort of mentor gritty moments was it's my junior year, and I had separated my shoulder earlier in the season wrestling. I had already been all-conference wide receiver in football, and I had placed like second or third in the 400 meters the previous year, so I knew that track was something that I would probably win in. And so long story short, I had this opponent, and I totally got freaked out during weigh-in. He got inside my head. You know, I was on the mat. I was making excuses. I had lemon face, trying to pretend my shoulder hurt. And so afterwards, you know, we're showering, and the coach says, "Before you go home, I want to see you in the gym." So I walk in there. Coach Saxel, if anybody knows wrestling in New Jersey, is renowned. He was a wrestler in high school. Went to Princeton. I don't think he lost a match in 8 years of high school and college wrestling. So he looked at me and he said, "Mr. Humphrey, were you hurt today or were you injured?" And I said, "Well, Coach, honestly, I think I was just hurt." I kind of got psyched out. And he said, "Well, I don't ever want to see that face on my mat again. If you're injured, I need to bring you out. But don't ever give up like that."
So I take it you lost the match.
I lost the match, and he says to me, "If you had won that match, you would have been the only junior in the history of Milburn High School to be all conference in 3 sports." And with that, he just turned and walked away.
Wow.
I wrote about it in the book Connect for Life, and it had a really profound impact on me because I had so much respect for this guy. And he basically pointed out that I'd quit. And so that sort of stuck with me. I think it probably gave me a little backbone later in life when things got tough.
Yeah, well, we're on the show to talk about grit. So what does grit mean to you personally and professionally?
You know, I've thought a lot about that since you asked me. You know, I think there's the obvious things like event-driven. You know, you get betrayed by a partner, you have a car accident, you know, your spouse is unfaithful, or whatever. Those are events, and they knock you on your back. And the wrestling metaphor is you're looking at the ceiling, and you have a few seconds to decide: are you going to get up, or are you just going to lay there and waller in it? And I guess I've just always gotten up. You know, so I think grit is really being able to take a shot, whether that's a financial shot or a bad decision or a bad relationship or a bad partnership, and not let it bring you to the knees. You know, I ended up serving in the Boy Scouts bankruptcy as part of the court. I was part of the claimants committee, and I was the chairman of that group, and we had like 82,000 claimants.
Wow, that must have
And
been
so
pretty tough.
I started studying resilience. Like, why is it that some people are resilient and can bounce back, and some people just roll over? And, you know, I think a lot of it's genetic. You know, your folks give you that tenacity. A lot of it is learning how not to quit. I think we're in a crisis here in America right now where people are taking these shots and rolling over and having a pity party and looking around and realizing no one's coming. So it's event-driven. It's, you know, you're an entrepreneur. That notion of walking in ambiguity, where you think you're doing the right things, but you don't see any of the results. You know, we just talked earlier about, you know, how your business is coming into its own in Q2. We just got into the black. But we walked for a lot of months in the red, trusting and hoping that the work we were doing was going to pan out the way we had hoped. And I think that's gritty. And then I'm also, the older I get, the more I realize how the wisdom of others can keep us on track. And if we're open to listening and changing and modifying our behavior, I think that takes a lot of fortitude. It's easy to be Billy Badass and I'm tough and I can go through anything. It's much more difficult to realize that your shtick or your personality or something that you do drives people nuts and you have to modify. I mean, I think that takes a lot of fortitude to do.
Well, we've talked about the importance of mentors. You talked about your wrestling coach. Are there others that have played a big role in your life?
Yeah. You know, I have been very fortunate. I have a very large network. I know we're going to talk about networking, but I don't think there's anything that I do in my life where I don't talk to somebody. I noticed that you interviewed Dave Casey. You know, Dave is on my personal board of directors. You know, my first real entrepreneurial venture, I graduated from SMU with a double major in finance and economics and went to work at Texas American Bank in Fort Worth and met a couple entrepreneurs. They wanted to get into the restaurant business. So after 2 years, in the 80s, I quit the bank and went to work in the restaurant business and went from 1 restaurant to 4 restaurants to 1 restaurant in 3 years.
I don't think I knew that about you.
30 years old, newly married, $250,000 in debt. And I really wanted to go back to grad school. I was so burned out. I had worked 7 days a week for 3 years. And one of my partners pulled me aside and he said, you know, we sort of talked you into that personal guarantee for 10% of this deal. And I know you don't want to keep in the restaurant business. I don't blame you. He said, I'll tell you what, you pay me $25,000 over the next 5 years. I will buy the remaining interest that you have in this last restaurant because we own the land, and he wanted the easement. And I'll just take over the debt. And that was Jim Webb, and he and I are still fast friends today. He's in his 80s. He's probably the most amazing entrepreneur I've ever met. So I think the people in my network, you know, I rely on a pretty regular basis. I mean, I have like 9 guys that are on my little personal board of directors that I don't always get them all together, but when there's something major in my life, I usually lean on them pretty hard.
Well, you wrote a whole book on this, Connecting for Life.
I did.
Talk about that and what that's meant to you.
So, you know, talk about events. You started Party Veda in 2003. By 2013, it was clear I didn't agree with the way that my partner was running it. And I thought it was wiser to avoid a public fight in a private company. So I just exited stage left. And then it's like, well, what am I going to do with myself? And I really felt like this idea of relationship marketing and content marketing, that the market, the decision makers in the market really wanted to talk to experts. They didn't want to talk to salespeople. And so I wrote this book called Connect for Life. We built Party Veda, as you know, without any commissioned salespeople. Probably one of the reasons you left, because you sold 15 million bucks and nobody wanted to pay you any more. So that was kind of a flaw in the model. But you know, so I spent almost a decade helping small companies align their leadership teams around connecting and marketing and selling and writing and being found in the marketplace. So
yeah, well, it was an effective methodology that you taught at Party Veda. It's one that I had naturally done, but it helped kind of crystallize it, really the importance of the network and having a person for every aspect of your life and a go-to. It's a great teaching. I think a lot of us still follow. So talk about your transition from, you know, restaurants to grad school, then getting back to entrepreneurship.
yeah, so I was very fortunate. SMU had an advisory program that was like a mentorship program. So you would go sit down and look at this big filing cabinet and flip through it. And I picked a guy whose name was John Cook. He was the CEO of a software company that was invested in by Ross Perot. And he and I became fast friends. And when I graduated from SMU, he hired me to go to work there. Long story short, it was classic startup, you know, $6.87 left in the checking account. We eventually got bought by Accenture. And so that's how I found my way into Accenture. And that's actually where I met Bruce. Bruce and I met at Accenture and, you know, thought, hey, we got an idea for building a better kind of services company. And so actually I quit Accenture to go learn how to sell. I'd never sold enterprise software. And that was a whole nother gritty experience. I went like a year, 0 for 11, thought I was going to get whacked, but I was working for a guy named Michael Fox, and Michael would just tell me to keep doing what I was doing, that I, and he actually told me once, he said, Lawson Software runs best at the end of a dirt road. You're trying to compete against PeopleSoft and shiny buildings in downtown Dallas, and they're just not going to buy Lawson. So I went out to Oklahoma and Arkansas and Louisiana and found distribution companies that wanted to buy our software, and that was the rest was history. It was very successful.
So first 11 deals struck out.
Second place, didn't lose, made it to the finals and lost to Oracle and JD Edwards and PeopleSoft, and it was horrible.
So who was the first one that you sold? Was it number 12?
Do
you remember
this? But yes, I do remember. This is how your mentors sometimes just give you a break. Michael says, "Come on, we're going for a ride," and he took me over to a company. It was actually Brinks out on 635. They were a Lawson customer. They needed a new AP module, they needed 10 licenses. He said, "This is going to be your first deal." I did nothing to earn the deal, absolutely nothing to earn the deal. But he had seen that I just wasn't going to quit. And it was funny. I got that deal. I put the skin on the wall, and I felt like, okay, I can do this. He has faith in me. And then the next 4 or 5 years, I was one of the top 5 salespeople in the company.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just takes one to give you that confidence, but you got to keep
going.
going.
I think you have to, you talk about gritty, but I mean, sometimes people with grit need those mentors and those leaders. Early in our Party Veda days, Bruce, this was customer number 3. Mm-hmm. We did this little strategy project for a guy named John Thompson. He was the CIO at Crossmark. And then he spoke at one of our events, and we did this great piece of work, and he didn't take any of our advice. So years later, I said to him, "Why did you hire us to do that project and just ignore everything that we said?" He said, "Well, I could tell that you guys needed a break, and I was in the position to give you one." And so he gave us a break. So I think it's seeing people with grit. It's giving people a hand up, not a hand out. And then I think you got to spend your life paying it forward. If people are doing that to you, you have to pass it on to others.
Yeah. Do you have an example of where you've done that for somebody else?
Besides you?
I knew you were going to go there.
That's funny. I have, I'm very fortunate. I've invested in lots of people's lives.
You have.
And I have this amazing, when I think about our success at Party Veda, I measure that success in the number of people that left and started their own companies.
Yeah.
And that's a growing list.
It's 15.
It's
20.
15 to 20 people have all built really cool little companies. I mean, heck, Jim and Lisa sold it back to Party Veda 10 years later. So, I think that and even when I was doing my coaching business around Connect for Life, the thing that I love the most is reaching into people's soul and finding that spark and helping to light it so that they can do that which they don't actually believe they can.
Yeah.
And that's my jam.
No, you're good at it. No, I was a CRM sales guy. You're like, you could be something more, and I didn't think I could, but you did a good job of getting me there, and I learned the consulting business, and it was a tough road. But let's talk about the Paraveda experiment story and what you went through starting that. What were the challenges, what you learned from it?
Well, so Bruce and I started it. I was employee number 1. I quit Hitachi in June of 2003. He joined in October that year. I think we incorporated late that year. And so 2004 was our first full year. Our first 5 years were pretty phenomenal. We did $1 million to $4 million to $10 million to $16 million to $22 or $23 million.
Yeah, I think I came in the year you guys hit 10.
Yeah, and so it was the first time that I realized that you can be making money, you can have a wonderful brand, you can have 100% referenceability, but you can still run out of money. And really understanding cash management, like when I go back to the restaurant days, like I can remember delaying payroll on Fridays because I knew if I gave you a check after 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock, I had Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday lunch to make payroll. And so those were some really difficult times. I was very fortunate. Bruce was very generous. He had obviously more resources than I did. And, we cobbled through. I think, so that was one challenge. Just cash flow is always a challenge. I think you can have the best relationship with somebody and still end up in a different place after 10 years. Everybody starts a company for a different reason. I always believed that companies exist for their shareholders first, and for their customers second, and for their employees third. And, some people argue about that. Some people say, if I take care of my people will take care of my customers. And I think we just sort of lost our way in managing that business for a profit. We were very profitable early on. We had profit sharing. We gifted 20% of the company to the employees when we did the ESOP. I don't think they valued it as much as they valued profit sharing, so that was a huge learning for me. And it kind of hurt my feelings because I'm like, this is my baby. I just gave you some of it, and you don't care.
People want cash now, or at least a lot of people do.
And I think the other thing is that you have to be really aware as an entrepreneur, like what you're really good at. And I'm a startup guy. I am not an operator. So when we got up to 30, 40, 50 million, and I was still doing the John thing, I think I was disruptive. Now, looking back on it, I might have been the luckiest guy of all, right, to get out and get paid. But I think you have to be really self-aware because entrepreneurs by nature are, we break a little glass, we step on a few toes.
Sure.
And so I think the thing that I've learned, and probably the way I'm like a kinder, gentler John, is that I try to stay in my wheelhouse. And I'm good at starting things. I'm good at figuring out how to get funded and cash flowed. And so, yeah, we're off to the races now with Cove Point.
That's awesome. So you finished your time at Paraveda, you helped others for 10 years, and you're back at it again.
Yeah, my wife laments that I killed a perfectly good business. It was a very good business. But I was very lonely. I went through the pandemic. I spent a lot of time with some companies, with some customers. But I got lonely, and I missed this. I missed the iron sharp as iron, the debate and the camaraderie and the calling somebody after a long day. You're driving home and it's 9 o'clock and you're tired and you just, hey, dude, I'm in the fight with you. What's going on? And so, so back at it.
Yeah. Maybe share with us, maybe one or two stories of challenge, failure, however you describe it, and how you use grit to work through it.
Yeah, well, I'll give you two examples. One was when I got my car wreck, which you remember.
Yes,
I got T-boned by a driver that shouldn't have been doing what he was doing, and it put me in the hospital, and I broke everything on the left-hand side of my body. And at that time, I was engaged with a client we both know, and both the CEO and the CFO showed up to the hospital that night. Yeah. And we were building an online trading platform for that company. And I just remember them saying, you know what? You got a good team. You can figure it out. Don't worry about anything. And that really meant a lot to me. And then I remember, because you used to come visit me, but I designed that platform laying on my bed. I was bedridden, sofa-ridden for 3 months. I was very fortunate because I was running a lot at the time, and I didn't dislodge anything, but I broke a lot of stuff. And so I just had to let it heal. And they let me, I was sitting there with a headset and a laptop and my dog on my lap and designed that trading platform laying on my back. And so I think that was what are you going to do? Like, you just going to lay here and feel sorry for yourself? Or are you going to, I was like, well, I got
Your mind was working. So you
5
put
or
it to
6 good hours a day, and
Yeah.
my 5 or 6 hours are as good as anybody else's 8 or 9. So that was a real challenge. And then I went through a deeply personal challenge. I had an unfaithful spouse and tried to put those pieces back together. And it was like, the one thing I wanted to be in life was a successful husband and a successful dad.
work. Yeah.
And when I finally woke up one day and realized that, as the movie says, she's just not that into me. It took a tremendous amount of courage to just say, you know what? You're the mother of my kids. I love you, but we need to go in different directions. And so, that was a dark time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think I lost hope for a little while, but I had lots of friends, and ended up hiring a personal trainer, who I still see today, 8 years later. And my ex and I are, friends. We've been in a couple of weddings, and it works.
Yeah, well, you got 2 successful kids. You got a new wife.
Yeah, I do. I'm very happy. I got a second chance at love and life, and picked up a daughter in the trade who I love. She's awesome. She's an ER trauma nurse, so she's a pistol. But yeah, I think this notion of get up, you were interviewing Brian Childers, and he had this story where he got his bell rung and went to the sidelines, and it was like, get back in the game.
Yeah.
And I think, the grit when it gets tested is that little voice in your head that says, get back in the game.
Yeah.
But it's also the advice of really good friends. I mean, the trainer thing was a total. I walked into the Starbucks at Preston Center, and in walks Eric Spomer. Eric had been in my Vistage group for 7 years. We knew each other very well. And I looked at him. I said, man, Eric, you look awesome. He said, yeah, I've gotten a trainer. And he looked at me kind of up and down. And he said, Hump, you look like shit. To the relationship grit part, right? And that afternoon, I found a trainer around the corner from my house. And I've been going to him twice a week for 8 years.
That's awesome.
Lost
Getting yourself in
25
great
pounds.
shape.
I feel like I'm as good a shape as I've ever been.
That's awesome. And you kind of answered one of my next questions is how do you continue to cultivate a gritty mindset? Obviously, working out is part of it, but what are some of the other things, habits you have, things you do?
Well, big into family.
Yeah.
My family energizes me.
Yeah.
We got some really great advice when we decided to blend the family that we should have no expectations of our adult children. So we take 2 vacations a year, one skiing in Park City and one we go to the Georgia coast. And maybe they all show up and maybe half of them, but so being with my family and friends, Sarah and I both love to travel. I also am very mindful on a daily basis of meditating and a 15-minute nap. And when I'm tired, I just walk into another room and I shut the door. So I'm very mindful of, I don't eat anything bad anymore. I try to eat around the edge of a grocery store. I do all my own cooking. Love to entertain and cook. That's one of my gifts to the world. So those things kind of keep me focused.
Well, next time when your kids don't want to come to Park City,
I'll call you. Yeah, get your wing better.
Yeah, I got to get my wing better. You talked about a speaker you saw the other night. Any favorite speakers or books? Or?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, so we are ticket holders to the Tate lecture series at SMU, and I didn't realize Andrew Brock's on the board.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so
He's
last
supposed
night.
to be on the show. I'm gonna give him a shout out right
Yeah,
now.
you
He needs to
should.
come on.
Last night they had Henry Winkler, and I grew up watching Happy Days, and of course we know what all of those actors became, but I didn't realize how timid he was inside. And the Fonz. And for 9 years after he, you ought to call him.
Yeah.
He has a gritty mindset. He couldn't get employed for 9 years because they wanted to typecast him, and he didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And he said something at the end. It was very inspiring. He says, "Don't ever put a period at the end of a negative thought, because you got to let it keep going until a positive comes." Books, my favorite books, Ryan Holiday, "The Obstacle is the Way." I think for me that book outlines why pain, and perseverance are required. It's like if you didn't have the obstacle, you would not find the way. It's an easy read. How to Win Friends and Influence People. I read that every year, whether I have to or not. Love is the Killer app. Not very many people know about that one, but that's a really good one. That was written by, I just totally lost his name, but he was with Cuban when they did the Broadcom thing. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge avid reader. I remember Zig Ziglar said once, "You're exactly where you will be a year from now, except for the people you meet and the books you read." So I'm an avid podcaster. I'm an avid reader. I'm an Audible guy, so I walk a lot. I probably walk 25, 30 miles a week, and I'm usually have a podcast going.
Awesome. Well, as we're kind of closing on the show, we really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. We've got listeners that are either thinking about an entrepreneurial journey or in the first steps of one. Maybe they're thinking about doing another one. What are some pieces of advice that you've learned that you would share?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first is surround yourself with good people and get good advisors and test your hypothesis before you put your money into it. You know, ask your friends if they would invest in it, and if not, why not? Not that you want their capital, but what you want is their criticism. You know, they love you. They'll give you really good advice. I've gotten some just outstanding advice from friends. The second is that, you know, once you do it, you'll never go back.
Yeah.
I mean, once you've been independent, even though, you know, we talk about grit and we talk about struggles, and there is nothing better than waking up every day and having a choice over what you do with your life.
Yeah, you and I are both terrible employees.
Yeah, I'm a horrible employee. But I mean, you know, once you've done that, you won't go back to the job. I spend most of my time talking people. I said, be an solopreneur. You should do that. And I think the third thing is that you got to believe that we are each here on this planet and given certain talents and skills and abilities that other people need. And we have this amazing gift of life, and we've been put here for a reason. And don't be afraid of failing. I mean, you know, what is Ziglar even said this? He said, failure is an event. It is not a person.
Yeah.
I never fear failure. I mean, failure makes you better, makes you stronger, makes you able to get around the obstacle.
No, that's very powerful, and it's awesome advice. And I love the get back up. And one of my favorite sayings that Brian said on the other shows, pros play hurt.
Pros play hurt. I thought about that the other day when I was like having my little allergy attack. So I think you've inspired a lot of guys, Matt. I mean, you know, you were just a lowly CRM salesman when we started the IT Roundtable in 02 or 03. Guys that inspire me from that group, you know, it's like Mike Clements, who's no longer with us, God bless him. He never complained for 1 second about being sick. And, you know, and Dave Casey and Michael Carnes and Sean Pickett and some of these guys, Brian Childers, you know, this community that we are getting to grow old with.
Yeah.
I'm getting to grow old with.
I'm getting there.
You're getting there, but you're not quite there yet. You know, you got to invest in these people. They're special. And we've been so fortunate to have a network of guys that love us, and we love them. And, you know, so if you haven't cultivated that type of esprit de corps with 10 or 15 men or women, then, you know, get busy, start tomorrow.
Yeah, I think having a network of, you know, that whole birds of a feather flock together. You know, we built this group of IT executives that get together every other Wednesday, and it's become a very tight-knit group and been a lot of the early guests on the show.
Yeah.
So, well, is there anything, obviously there's a lot to cover in your life and what you've accomplished. Anything you wanted to touch on that maybe we didn't hit so far?
No, I mean, I think that expect challenges. You know, this world is not perfect. You are not perfect. Your spouse is not perfect. Your business partner is not perfect. Your friends are not perfect. Your children are not perfect. So quit being a perfectionist and find your way to add value and be salt and light in the world so that people will follow or people will see opportunities. And I think that's the thing I'm focused on every day. I think gratefulness is a weapon, and I have certainly been through my share of trials, but I wake up every day grateful, and I think, I've been rewarded because of that.
Yeah. Now, you've been through a lot, my friend, and you're a true example of grittiness. So thanks for coming on the show and sharing your story. Thanks for being a great friend and a mentor. As I was starting my business, John would take my calls at like midnight and talk until he fell asleep on the other end. So I will always appreciate that and cherish that time. So for those out there listening, hopefully you took some good pieces away from today. John's a great resource and friend. I'll tag him on the show post. So for those out there thinking about taking that first step, get out there. Just do it. We'll be signing off here. Stay gritty.